Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Got good news on the New Mexico front for the ban that Lujan Grisham put into play. We have David Herrera Urias, the judge he's a Democratic judge, who actually stayed the order. He put a temporary restraining order in place, and this comes on the heels of her losing really, really big with the Attorney General, the sheriff of Bernalillo County. The other thing that is hilarious about this is she was interviewed by Poppy on CNN, and she stumbled through the interview, and it was so hilarious because Colleen Noir went off and on this little tangent on this whole thing. She brings up abortion rights. She doesn't answer the question multiple times that Poppy pushes towards her. It's interesting to see CNN push back. When you see people like David Hogg, Hogg usually comes out for gun violence bills or disarmament bills, and he even came out and said there is no such thing as a temporary or as a restraining order, or not a restraining order, a way to suspend civil rights. It's interesting that Grisham keeps trying to push this, and she's talking about things that have happened in New Mexico. She said that we were the third largest gun crime state, which is absolutely false. You can look at the FBI's own statistics to prove that it's wrong. So where she's getting these, let's look at the actual Everytown statistics. Those are the ones that even the Fed uses, and they show that we're like not even close to the third largest gun crime state in the U.S. So, as I've kept saying, we are winning, and we were going to win this anyway. When you have every law enforcement agency, even the ones that are in blue strongholds like Bernalillo County or Bernalillo APD, Albuquerque Police Department, when they come out and say there's absolutely no way we can enforce this because it's unconstitutional. Well, duh. And what I thought was more interesting, and I've never really paid attention to this, although I should have, New Mexico's 2A amendment that we have in the New Mexico Constitution is actually more broad than the 2A in the national state, in the national Bill of Rights. So for her to think she was going to get up there, this is her virtue signaling. This is her trying to push it. A temporary restraining order does not mean that we're safe for now. Given the blowback she's received from this, I don't see her moving forward. However, she has doubled and tripled down on this, and if she goes to appeal this, then we have to go through appellate court, which means that this restraining order, or the temporary restraining order, it can't be upheld. It means that they're going to have to take a longer time to go through the process, and the wheels of the law, lawfare is never fast. That's what concerns me, because she's doing this for brownie points. She's trying to show what governors in heavily blue states can do. I think that there will be, I suspect Gavin Newsom's watching this very carefully, and the reason why he is being silent is because he knows when you have people in your own party that are pushing for you to stop this and stay this, and then you have your own appointees back away from you, it's not a good look, especially on the national stage. So if she was trying to get her next position, which I firmly believe that's what she was doing, she failed. If you can't do something like this, or you try to do something like this, and you have zero chance of success, you're probably not the best person for something like Everytown, or for any of those other positions that are coming out in support of her. So it's interesting that this all played out. Now, it has been all over the interwebs, and there's not very many gun tubers that are not talking about this. Brandon Herrera had a great video if you want to have a little chuckle. I would recommend checking out his, because he goes off basically like, oh, and she's being supported by boom. And then they're showing the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department saying, no, we're not doing this. It's bad, really bad. And I spoke about this morning when the New Mexico Attorney General says, we're not backing you in court for this type of thing. So what is hilarious about this is that she got smacked. That is what we need to say. I think it's the case that actually got the temporary restraining order is Donk v. Grisham, and that's if you want to know. As far as what's going on the national stage, this has made national news. This has made it on every podcast I listen to. I've listened to Glenn Beck. I listened to the News and Why It Matters. I've listened to Tim Pool. Tim Pool railed on this. He's had several guests. The day that this was announced, he had Brandon Herrera on his show. And it shows that this is a big issue. The other thing that was hilarious about this is they used the Bruin decision in the stay, the temporary restraining order. And they were saying that in light of the Bruin decision, this doesn't hold constitutional muster. Now, understand that the Judge Urias, is a Democratic, a Democratic appointee to this court, and he saw no way that they could proceed forward and that it would likely fail on merit. That's how a temporary restraining order gets put into place against something like this, is they have to show in court that they have a likely chance of succeeding to stop the TRO, okay? And what happened was exactly the opposite. They had almost no chance that this would stand up to constitutional muster. So what is awesome is seeing the rebellious spirit of New Mexicans stand up and say, no, we're not taking this. And you're seeing even those really, really quiet lawmakers in New Mexico finally come out of the woodwork and start wanting to do something. This is the type of action we need to see on the national stage, not just for gun rights, but for anything that matters. And it has to come from this type of thing and the cultural impacts that are there. We aren't like California. We are not like New York. New Mexico is none of those. We recognize in New Mexico, and I've said this multiple times, so I'm not going to beat this dead horse. It's just hilarious to see that it finally got dealt with. It took long enough. I was hoping it would be done by Monday, but it took them longer to get through the court sessions to get through this done. This is what you can expect with lawfare. None of these court cases are going to be very easily won or thought of overnight. You're going to have to go through the legal process, which is always slow as hell. And that's why we're all still waiting for the decisions for Mock v. Garland and Vanderstock v. Garland. We're all waiting for that. It's interesting that they even went so far as to talk to Merrick Garland to see if they could possibly get him on our side, because this is absolutely unconstitutional. I don't believe he responded to the request. The other thing I think is interesting about this is that they're still talking about impeaching her. To me, that's the correct course of action. But I've also seen the counter to that now. Since this temporary restraining order had been put in place, there is now a petition running around saying, don't impeach the governor, because it's a waste of time. And I think that, if anything, this would be the best thing to do for New Mexico during the next session. While it sounds like it would grind gears and they wouldn't be able to do anything, I'm of the volition that New Mexico is broken, the government-wise, at that point. And I'd rather see them not be able to do a damn thing. And if that means removing the governor, because removing the governor means that she cannot exercise her oath of office or basically sign off on any laws anymore. It would be the lieutenant governor that would have to step in. And while the lieutenant governor is one of her little toady lackeys, it's still probably better than her. And that is absolutely what I think should be the next course of action. And I'm still advocating for that. and New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union, because it's a small group. I imagine we're all of the same volition, because what we've lived through the COVID stuff, this is what gave her the power to do what's going on. And that temporary restraining order basically used that, saying that she cannot use that order for these types of things. I don't believe that she's going to stop. And I believe that this next session, unless we tie her up with an impeachment or the attempt to impeach her, which takes time, then she will definitely try for more gun restrictions, more disarmament stuff for New Mexicans, when we have pretty much everything that would be a wet dream for anyone in California. And we're this side of being what's in Chicago. We have red flag laws. We have universal background checks. Why? And she even said in that interview with CNN that those were, how did she get those if they were going to be held up to the Bruin decision? This is where we need to push back, because they shouldn't have been held up. Because there's absolutely no way you can enforce universal background checks. You cannot physically put enough cops out in the world to check everybody who sells a gun from one person to another. Okay? That is a piece of property. I don't think you should have to. I think you should do some basic due diligence. I mean, it's a good idea probably to get a background check so that you don't get held to your feet to the fire if something bad goes on. But I know, I have several friends that I wouldn't have a problem, selling them a gun, because I know they've cleared a background check because they have their CCW and they buy guns all the time. If I have a piece of property, if I have a collector's item and I've had enough of it and I want to put it out for sale, okay, number one, what the government should never intercede in that transaction. That's number one. Number two, what does it matter? If someone wants to pay something for a piece of property and they're legally able to own the firearm or own that piece of property, what's to stop you from selling it? That's how I've always felt. And the red flag law came after the shooting on December 7th. I have a lot of ties to that. And I had to, at work today, so I've got a job. And I've got another one possibly lined up. I've had 2 interviews for that one. And we'll see where that goes. But I've got one that's getting me some income coming in right now, which I needed. Okay. But what I was going to say is I had to I'm working with used to be a former partner, meaning that these guys did the cabling and stuff for the institution I used to work for. And they're the ones that actually installed the locking devices on the doors and the system that had allowed us to lock down. And we had a discussion today about a new device they have to lock down instantly. Okay, and instead of using a key card or a key fob, this one literally you just push a button and then you have to reset the button. Now, I had some reservations about that because of the flashbacks from that day. And why I say that is because I still believe that talking to someone else to unlock the doors, I'm okay with them being locked, because the worst thing you did was save time. You save times. You lock down the institution. Yeah, that's a minor inconvenience, but the counter to that is what happens when a bad dude rolls in. Okay. This one makes this, the idea of locking down, more palatable. It also makes it easier, but more specifically, what they were telling me about it, and this should be a thing, is you should drill for those types of incidents. You should check your locking devices if you're in one of these institutions at least once a month. That's what I was trying to do. And it would be a lot more convenient for those if they could just schedule that stuff, go ahead and do the lockdown, test everything, and not have to call someone to unlock it. What I'm saying here is that convenience factor of making those drills more palatable and easier to do may cause them to do that more often. The fact is that if we exercise the muscle, you fail, You learn this in training for guns, that you're relegated to the lowest level of your training, and muscle memory is a thing. So in a very stressful situation, you fall back on that lowest level of training. If they train at that lowest level and know it always works, then if it ever happens, they don't have to worry about it. It worked. Okay? We don't have to worry about it. It's the same reason why we carry a gun. Okay? Is so that we can keep people safe. We keep ourselves safe. So I've droned on about the governor. I'm tired of it. Next week I will try to find something a hell of a lot cooler to talk about. Maybe I can see if I can find some new stuff that they're trying to bring out. I've noticed a couple discussions on bullpups. I've always been intrigued by bullpups, but I've never gotten one. And that's because I'm a bigger framed guy, and every time I went to use one or shoot one, I've always had problems with mag changes. Now that's a training thing, but there's something to be said about the bullpup when most militaries, except for the United States and the Russians, are using bullpups. Maybe there's some secret sauce there that we need to take a look at. All of us do. It's one of those guns that I'll probably end up with eventually, one type of it. And the one I'm leaning towards, just because it's 80s cool, is like a Steyr AUG, because it looks cool and it's 80s cool. You saw it in a lot of 80s movies. Like, share, subscribe, be great.